Today I'm talking to Brian Cahill, head of IT at Frogslayer, about managing IT and security as a team of one. I'm Marisa, and this is the It Factor. Let's explore pro tips that make lean IT teams unstoppable. How do you prioritize your workload when everything seems urgent or you're the only one handling all of the IT responsibilities?
Although I'm an IT team of one, it's like when it comes to the company, we are a team as a company. So I delegate things out. So just because traditionally IT has done something doesn't mean I can't use somebody else to manage that. So instead of holding all the cards, I'm operating as a team and using non-direct reports where they have interest or abilities to let them do some of the work, especially stuff they're interested in.
Nice. What are some of the things that you delegate?
One of the big things I try to delegate is licensing. If you need some software and you're a business unit owner or you own the budget, can I get you a virtual credit card and say the software's approved? Here you go. You're in charge of assigning the licenses and manage them. The other is permissions. If I have my IDP set up correctly where I can delegate the ability to manage permissions, then somebody else can add people to groups. And so they don't have admin level access, but by adding them to groups, they can be granting permissions for their users, the people on their project.
What are the telltale signs that an IT department is stuck in that reactive firefight mode?
I usually look for somebody who's giving excuses, not taking responsibility, or when politics is becoming part of the game. And part of it becomes when IT is not aligned with the business or when IT is not being proactive. Those are the two things that get you into firefighting mode. And when you're not aligned with the business, they think they have to escalate everything because you're not kind of working together. And then, if you're not being proactive, it's kind of a mess, and that makes firefighting happen too.
How do you balance immediate needs with strategic, sort of long-term IT planning when you're sort of the one person in charge of managing all that?
Try to break down kind of what are some pieces that get me there, and each quarter have a couple things, we call them rocks, that are kind of my priorities for the quarter. And so I'm trying to work on those and let all the urgent, critical stuff fall in as sand that falls around those.
What's your advice for setting healthy boundaries as the solo IT admin when everybody expects almost 24/7 availability?
Being in IT, I'm used to being on call 24/7. I think newer IT guys aren't as much due to SaaS and stuff just works. Being older IT where we manage, I've got to work my work-life balance around that, but that's an okay thing. The next is try to see, can I put pressure on requesters to come up with an ETA? Like, when do you need this? And one way I do that is if you put an after hours request in our ticketing system, it says, hey, here's our business hours. If this is a urgent matter, here's a phone number to call. And so I'm asking them to prioritize it themselves, but also forcing them to take another step of making a phone call if it's really critical. So kind of putting the bucket into their court. And then if you have a culture of trust, you're gonna have less employees making every request a P1 request. So a culture of trust is a big piece of not being kind of run haggard. Is if people know when you say you're going to do something, you will. They're not going to make every request super urgent. They'll be more realistic with their expectations. If they know you're going to tell them a week and take 2 weeks, they're going to say everything's a P1. So a culture of trust is a big piece of that.
What's your approach to staying current with tech trends while also managing that day-to-day responsibilities?
A couple of my IT certifications require continuing education, which I kind of hate, but at the same time, I like. So it basically means every year I've got to have so many hours of continuing education. So that for me is a good deadline. I think there's 2 or 3 of them. There are different deadlines during the year. I've got to practically go study something and learn something a little deeper than just the kind of snippets we pick up as we go along.
As a one-person IT team at Frogslayer, what was your biggest, I cannot believe I used to do this manually moment?
I think because I've always wanted a centralized IDP where everything just managed itself, there wasn't I can't believe I was doing this manually. I think when you finally get most of it set up, you're like, oh, I finally arrived. So I think it's the idea of just having a central place that manages all user accounts and permissions and turns things on and off with you kind of making a change in one place. And with Rippling, it's because HR is part of that. It's even more so than just an IDP. It's linked together. So if there's more people who have pieces of it that they own, there's less I've got to do.
I know you've saved countless hours on admin tasks. Which specific automation do you think has given you the biggest return on investment?
It's kind of like I mentioned before, it's empowering users. I did this in Azure AD when I created permission groups that people had permission to set things in, although in there it never really took off because that just gave you access to Azure stuff. Now with Rippling giving you access to Slack and Google and Azure and 3 or 4 different systems. And so just setting up that system where one project group puts you in 5 or 6 different groups within other systems, that's been a huge jump ahead of me manually doing that. And then basically when I've got it set up, then they're actually putting the people in for me.
If you had to pick only 3 IT automations for a solo IT admin or lean team with a super limited budget, which would you recommend first and why?
So first would be organize your systems and permissions. So before you can automate something, it has to have some order to it because you have to automate something that's repeatable. The second thing I would say is use an IDP. You can pay for IDPs, but you can also take the free version of Microsoft Entra, and that will take you a long way. You're missing a couple of the advanced functionalities, but you can get at least the single sign-on and a single place to turn users off for free with Microsoft Entra. And third would be empowering other people. Can you make FAQ articles that you can either automatically give to people or say you don't have the budget for that type of service desk? Do you have them set up so you can reuse those responses multiple times? Can you have something where you get virtual credit cards? Ramp does it. There's a number of credit cards do this now where you can give credit cards to users and let them kind of manage some of their own subscriptions. So first is organize your stuff. Second, get an IDP. And third, can you empower other users so it's not just IT holds all the balls?
How can you make sure that users are managing subscriptions appropriately or safely?
Oftentimes you just ask IT like a piggy bank, like I need this, I need this, I need this, and you never come back to us and say, I'm done with it, unless you see the dollar signs. And so putting kind of people that own those dollars in charge of some of those SaaS services really helps with actually turning licenses off and saving money.
How do you communicate the value of IT investments, speaking of budget, to leadership when ROI is not immediately visible or super clear?
Well, I go back to see, you got to know what the business goals and objectives are, because I've made ROI proposals before that they didn't care for because ROI was not meaningful. And so I have to tie my ROI back to how does it translate to the business? Because just because something's cheaper or saves time and money doesn't mean the business wants it. So I try to sell, this aligns with the business needs and it gets us where we're going. We're trying to sell something, we're trying to build something, we're trying to do something. How does this get us there faster or more efficiently? Business value ROI. So it's less about just faster, better, but what does the business want? Faster, better.
What security measures do you consider non-negotiable, even for the smallest IT teams with budget constraints?
Well, I like to say my users are my first line of defense. And so the question is, how do I bring them in and give them an ownership for security and make them feel like a trusted partner and not a bother? But if a user gets a virus in their machine, can I give them the CD and say, here's the instructions for reinstalling Windows, I want you to do it. I've now given them some level of ownership instead of just, let me dump this laptop back to IT and hand me a new one, having them do some of the work. And so there's basically, if you can build a level of trust and also something where the users have some ownership and some skin in the game, that's really helpful. Yeah, it takes kind of a whole business system where you're going to go back to the manager and say, hey, they've got 5 hours down, they got a virus in their machine, I'm having them reinstall it, and I'm showing them how to do that so they understand what that takes and what that involves, which I think that may go farther towards them being more careful next time than just, I was testing them with this software and they got a virus and I handed them a ready-to-go laptop and they took off and it took them 5 minutes of their time.
What's been your most successful strategy for maintaining SOC 2 compliance without having that become a full-time job?
Using SaaS services. So using an MDM to manage all the Windows updates and, antivirus settings and whatnot. So Rippling's got it all built together where the MDM and the antivirus are one thing, which is kind of nice. So you have one piece of software I'm using to do 2 things. And then, it's just automating and reporting. Before we started SOC 2, I was kind of on a slow journey and we just kind of made more and more things organized over time. And so we actually did the SOC 2. It wasn't that much work. So it's a matter of just, rather than saying, I want to become SOC 2, it's how do I organize and set up my stuff for success? Because the most secure system is the most organized one. Because the one where everything's a mess, you don't know where somebody's getting in because so disorganization is your biggest security vulnerability.
So looking back on your IT journey at Frogslayer and your previous experience, what would you do differently if you were going to start from scratch today?
I don't know that I do a whole lot differently. So when I came to Frogslayer, I was at a really big company and then kind of medium-sized one. This was a startup. And so I came in saying, all right, probably was the first time I did this, came and say, I want to learn the culture and what's going on here before I lock everything down like a tank. And so that was something I would bring to another company with me, as well as before I come in and just change stuff, what is the company culture? What is their ethos, and how does IT line up and support that as opposed to being IT versus the others? And that first step builds that trust, which then you've got users now on your side and you're kind of working as a team. And then we go through the security process, but then you're going through that with an eye to how do I match up security with company culture and trust and responsibility and marry those two together.
Okay, if you could sum up your advice for lean teams, what are a few things that you want solo IT owners to take away from this conversation?
I think my big thing I'd like to take away is find out where the business is going and line up what you're doing with that. And some of us get in IT get so tight on this is not secure. Well, that's not true. Every business has a different security posture and security risk profile. Some businesses are okay with more risk, but lining up with business saying, how do I make you successful and get you that next spot? Because that then has you tied in. There's a trust relationship going on there, and there's less of they're saying everything is a P1 you request, and they're going to less to make you firefight if they know IT is here enabling me and we like them, and so we want to work with them, as opposed to like, let's just give them too much to do because they're the guys that we don't like. So yeah, I think lining IT and business up, and then make incremental steps. Don't just do the urgent critical stuff, but have kind of a list of here's where I want to take the company long term, here's where I want to get to, and what are some steps that I'm doing on a either monthly or quarterly basis, some little projects they're kind of eating away at that, getting me to my desired state.
The last question, what is your spiciest IT hot take at the moment?
I think I'm looking at all the AI and SaaS tools, and like we have a lot of really cool stuff. The fact that I can just pay for something and it does all this stuff that we used to do manually. But what I like to point out though is like if I add all that on top of a disorganized mess, it becomes a really big mess, because all of a sudden now I've got 35 SaaS subscriptions and 10 AI subscriptions and money just going everywhere, or even security of my data going everywhere. And so with all the cool tools we've got, there still has to be this baseline of like, here's my setup, here's where I keep X and Y data, here's where things live. So even that the organized baseline is what helps me take full advantage of AI and SaaS without getting just like buried by, here's this mess.